Alright guys, quick disclaimer. The airsoft replica and or parts in this video are not real firearms. And nothing shown works in real firearms either. So don't try it. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And everything here is strictly for airsoft use. Again, these are airsoft use only. Alright, let's get into it. Hey everyone, James here with Wyshtech Airsoft. Today we're taking this poor empty Boneyard G28 and turning it into something far beyond factory. And I do mean empty. There's no gears, no piston, no motor, just a sad shell of what it used to be a designated marksman rifle, but not for long. We're fully rebuilding it with a custom performance parts list built around Perun's new ETU, specifically made for the VFC G28 and HK417. This video is going to cover the feature set of that ETU, how I plan to hit 1.5 joules on 3.2 gram BBs, and why pre-cocking and motor timing are the secret sauce for sharp trigger response even in mid-speed builds. Here's everything going inside in this new DMR style G28 build, or HK417. Started off with, as you already know, the Perun G28 HK417 by VFC. The Retro Arms version 2.2 gearbox shell with 8mm 3x3 bearings. Very strong bearings, by the way. Now if we move over to my parts tray here, of course we're going to be using the spring guide that comes with the gearbox. Retro Arms 14.5 tooth piston with Airsoft Mutations Whisper piston head. Retro Arms full cylinder, stainless steel. This is actually about 24 millimeters wide, so it's a little bit of a bore up. We got Airsoft Mutations cylinder head. A modified Bulgare version 2 aluminum tappet plate. I had to trim some material off right here so it'll fit the version 2.2 gearbox, and then I trimmed the leaf here for tappet plate timing reasons. And the motor powering this replica is Solink's brand new, just recently came out, brushless motor Advanced Plus. The Plus means that this is their newer version that has a better response and torque. So this is going to make this replica more responsive through the trigger. And we're going with 31K at 11.1 volts. For the nozzle, we're going with EPS's 21.2 millimeter length nozzle. This is their nickel coated PTFE nozzle. This coating is super strong, very resistant to abrasion, and very slick. Inside there's double O-rings, one right at the entrance and then another one right down the middle. This helps with nozzle stabilization and reduces nozzle wobble, especially in the extended position. And then we got the Wyshtech Edition J-Von gear set. Short stroked by 2 teeth on the pickup with an SHS delayer chip to guarantee feeding. And I've already taken consideration of this delayer chip for proper feeding and tappet plate timing, so we'll get very consistent FPS with 3.2 gram BBs. Here's the spur gear. We're running 18-in-1 gear set. If you want to get yourself a Wyshtech Edition J-Von gears, I'll have the links down in the description below. And just to show you guys, here's the factory trigger. We'll go over this more later in the video. We're going to be putting the max hop-up in this guy. Always have great results on these max hop-ups, mainly because they're TDC and their build quality. I got a adapter that's 3D printed to accommodate the max hop-up. And to accommodate with the hop-up, we're going to be using Maple Leaf's hop-up tensioner and Airsoft Mutations LC bucking 65 degree. And then the barrel of choice, middle range, is the Lambda 601 363 millimeter. This combination of parts here should maximize the efficiency, accuracy, and range of 3.2 gram BBs. Really take advantage of that. One more part that I want to point out. For a tappet plate spring, we're going to use the Retro Arms tappet plate spring. I've had good results with these. I've tried using stronger springs from McMaster, and I've always had them snap right here. These Retro Arms are a little bit more forgiving, and they don't snap, and they yield consistent FPS consistency. And for the spring that we're going to try in this thing is the Matrix M120 spring. Now, I may go up or down depending on what the chrono result ends up being with the air volume ratio that we're targeting with this build. This isn't just a parts dump. It's carefully selected to hit the 1.5 joules on 32 gram BBs, run cool and clean, and feel sharp with the Perun's programmable precocking to do the heavy lifting for that trigger response. Now, I know some people might say,
James, why not go 13-in-1 or DSG?
And the answer is reliability and control. This customer doesn't want a speed soft monster. They want a responsive, reliable platform that shoots consistently every time, not burn through their gearbox in a month. It's a bit extreme, but you get the point. With 18-to-1 gears and the Solink 31K motor, we'll land around 25 rounds per second. But here's the key. That motor's unidirectional bearing, located in the collar here, will allow me to dial in precocking timing perfectly with the Perun ETU. So even though it's not a speed build, the trigger will feel fast because the piston's already in the preloaded position, ready to go. First shot lag, gone. Alright, so what about the Perun G28 HK417 that I'm sure some of you are really curious about? Well, let's start off with open the box details. So we open up this guy. Right at the bat, you have your little package of the ETU itself. I'm going to take this cover off. You get a card, a sticker, ooh, and everybody loves a patch, and then a 3D printed cutoff lever. More on that later. Okay, so here's a close-up on the trigger unit itself. There's your little clicker lever right there. So I still have the factory gearbox, and the way it will go is you don't have to open up your gearbox to put this electronic trigger unit in it. So it'll simply just replace exactly in the same spot where your original trigger set will be. Additionally, you can move your trigger from your old set to this guy. To do all this, all you got to do is just read the manual, and it shows you step by step on how to do this. In this video, I'm not going to show you how to do a step-by-step installation. I'm just going to show you the features of this electronic trigger unit. So let's talk about what Perun brought to the table here. It's got a full sensor-based detection for the sector gear, selector plate, and the trigger. Here's its selector right here, which interfaces with this guy, which is on the side of your gearbox, and that just goes right in that little slot there. So it's got pre-travel, brake force, and over-travel adjustment screws built right into it. So you can adjust any of those three. You can make it to where your trigger doesn't have any take-up at all. So right when you pull the trigger, it fires. It also has adaptive trigger control, which means it recalibrates every time you plug in the battery to the trigger. It has an electronic fuse, precocking to improve first shot performance, and fire mode programming just like all the other ETUs that Perun makes. Directly through the fire selector. It's basically a smart brain for your replica that doesn't come with the monthly subscription, unlike everything else in 2025. Before I throw on the Perun electronic trigger unit, I'm going to show you guys how this came together. Got everything shimmed up, and I actually used Airsoft Mutation shims that they just recently came out, and I gotta say, I love them. Especially because I get 0.15, so I can really dial in the shimming on these gears and get them perfect. I double checked my tappet plate timing and made sure I had this tappet plate fin trimmed correctly for when it releases at the right time, when there's between 2.5 and 3 teeth left before the piston's released. That should give the nozzle plenty of time to be resting against that bucking. Got the rails greased and the gears greased, cylinders nice and greased. I even shimmed the cylinder head with a cylinder head shim provided by Airsoft Mutations. This is to keep the cylinder head nice and secure in the gearbox, so there's no nozzle tilt from the BBs hitting the nozzle from the magazine. So it will help mitigate bid cap syndrome even more so. Other than that, everything fit nice and perfect. Oh, and I did have to trim the bull gear tappet plate. I don't know if I mentioned that already, so that it fit this gearbox. Because if I left those fins there that are typically on these tappet plates, even on the plastic ones, this tappet plate will not fit. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and close the gearbox. Like butter. So if you're installing this in a RetroArms gearbox, there's a couple things I want to point out for you guys. First off, this screw that holds the gearbox together and the original trigger unit does not attach to this. So what I ended up having to do was I made myself a spacer. This is off of a OEM sector gear that I trimmed down to size perfectly so that when I run the screw down right here, it doesn't squish these together and cause it to screw up my shimming job here. So that's something really important to keep in mind. And then for this one, there's really no screw hole for it to attach to. So the way that this goes in, it hooks in and it's secured from pulling down this way. So you just use Loctite for this one. Then back here, this is where it really counts. I actually had to put 1.3 millimeters worth of shims right here because when it's attached here, there's that much of a gap between this plastic and what fits in here. And I also put it on the top side here so it forces this all the way up against the gearbox this way so that the flat edge underneath the selector plate here is nice and flush with here. So that way the selector plate isn't like lifted up like this. It's nice and flat for when the selector plate moves back and forth. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get this installed and we'll move on to the next step of this video. Pro tip about the wiring: when you put this thing back in, do yourself a favor. You'll make your life a hell of a lot easier if you take the selector switch out, because this pull right here will make your life miserable because you got to fight it over that selector plate. So with that out of the way, you can have a lot easier time dropping this down and manipulating your wire. So back on the subject of wiring, you want to route it up inside the channels as tight as you can, because if you don't, the receiver is going to chew up these wiring and short out and you're going to have issues. The way the wiring goes is you'll have your negative wire tucked in that little groove right there, and then your positive is actually going to go on the opposite side of your gearbox shell. So it's going to go down on this side. That's why there's this groove here. Make sure your wires stay in those grooves when you put the gearbox back in, because if you don't, you're going to pinch the wiring and ruin them. And also, I'm going to do this here in a little bit. I'm actually going to snip this guy off and going to use shrink wrap starting from here all the way here to make life a bit easier when I route this wiring back into the buffer tube. This is a mod that I do on nearly every pay run that I do, because this wiring insulation is so soft that putting your battery in and out constantly ends up stripping the insulation off. So I highly recommend doing it yourself to prevent having the same headache that I have had in the past. Because if you don't do that, insulation gets stripped and it shorts out on the metal buffer tube and you have a bad ETU now. Okay, so the mods that I had to do was I had to take some plastic off 2 millimeters off of this guy, so it was about out to here, and I cut it down to here. And then I had to do the same thing, about the same amount of material from here to here, because this guy was actually out to here, and therefore allowing this to come all the way far back as it could. And you know it's going to come back far enough when your bearing hole here is almost right up against this. You don't want to mess with any of this, because if you do, then you just ruined it, because now it's not going to pull this back as far back as it should. So this is how you should do it, and this is what worked. Additionally, I went ahead and filed down this groove here, probably about another 1 or 2 millimeters down, and it should work now. So with all these mods done, let's go ahead and throw it back in the receiver and put it all together and see if that selector switch binds up. Smooth as butter. Quick heads up, most of the parts going into this build are available on my website, including the Solink motor, the Lambda barrel, Wyshtech gear set by Javon, and more. Let me know if you guys are interested in me carrying the Perun HK417 ETU for this build. So if you're planning your own G28 or HK417 upgrade, or just want to snag some of these components for another replica, I'll leave a link down in the description below. It'll take you straight to the website and you can browse around. Every order helps support the channel and keeps these builds going strong. Now with that out of the way, let's see how this thing performs in semi-auto with precocking enabled. One thing I like about the Retro Arms gearbox is that this little window here, you can see how far the piston's precocked. Would have been nice if they did it more elongated so you can really see where it's at, to really dial in that precocking. So for those who are unfamiliar with precocking, once the piston's cocked and ready, you get a near instant trigger response, even at 25 rounds per second, using rounds per second as a metric for how fast the gears are spinning. So check it out. Okay, now it's precocked. You can see the piston there. Now watch. Near instantaneous. All right, I'm going to go ahead and trigger spam so you can see what that looks like. Pretty damn good if you ask me. And to show off the clicker a little bit. and to show you what full auto sounds like. And this is where adaptive trigger sensing and precocking shine. Even with the standard style VFC trigger, it feels like you're tapping a high-end mouse. Quick reset, minimal travel, and double taps unless you mean it. So now that we got the main body out of the way, the next thing I'm going to work on now is getting the barrel setup done. I first got to get this adapter put in. I got to pull out the OEM one and put this guy in so that we can utilize the Max M4A Pro hop-up. We're going to use Airsoft Mutations LC bucking, 65 degree. And then I'm going to install this hop-up tensioner. Alright, got the block in, and so far it's a good fit. So look at that. The hop-up doesn't move side to side hardly at all. So that rigidity right there is going to make a huge difference in accuracy. So now that we got that taken care of, we can assemble this and move on to the next part. And that's going to be, I know you guys want to get to the chrono, but I still got one more issue to address. Apparently the mag spring followers and the springs in these mags are pretty crappy, according to what I've been told. And so doing a little bit of research, come to find out that the EPM1 magazine spring and follower is the solution for the issues that these magazines create. And for those who are unaware, apparently these magazines cause misfeeding issues and just all sorts of problems. And to fix that, just simply put in this kit in each one of these mags, and there's 6 of them I think that I gotta do. So I'm only gonna do the one for this video to show you guys the chrono, and because I'm really curious how this thing is gonna perform in the chrono. So I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about it. So that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and tear into this magazine, get this put in there, and go from there.
2 hours later.
So I got the old mag apart right here and the new mag apart right here. And the reason why I'm at this point right now is because I've already went ahead and tried putting the PTS spring and the follower in, and I found that the PTS spring and follower was jamming up in this mag, in the old one. But this one was completely stock, and I did the same exact test. I filled up the mag all the way and released the BBs and to see how it behaved. Where the PTS mag follower on this guy, it literally got stuck. But on this one, doing the same exact thing, filling up with 32 gram BBs, came out flawlessly with the factory spring and follower. And the thing that I noticed in the difference between the two, other than the factory spring and follower, and the new one, is that the new one has silicone lube in it, and this one's bone dry. So I'm wondering if that has something to do with it. Additionally, when I pulled out the factory spring and follower in the new mag, came out with almost no resistance. The PTS mag spring came out with a little bit of resistance, so like I could literally feel it. I looked at the tracks very closely, and other than the lube between the two, this one being dry and this one obviously having some, I don't see any damage inside the tracks themselves, and I even cleaned it. So I think what I'm going to do is put the old one back together, but this time with the factory follower, because the factory follower is a bit more rounded, and I think that might be the issue with the PTS, because it's got an articulation. So I think that's what's getting caught up in here. So in order to truly see how that feels, I'm gonna do exactly what I just said and go from there. If it still feels like it hasn't changed at all, then I'm going to move on to see if it's the lube. And then the last resort I'm going to consider is, well, the PTS spring is just too much. It is, in fact, longer, and I only get 98 rounds in this magazine instead of the factory, I think it was 110 rounds. But anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and test that, and I'll get back to you guys.
Alrighty then.
So here we are. I ended up cutting this much of the spring off, the PTS spring, because it was too long. By adding this much more length into this mag was creating so much tension that the follower was literally getting stuck on one of the bends because of how hard that spring was pressing on it when the mag was full. So by cutting that and using the OEM follower, releases all the BBs out of the mag like it should. It just spits it all out like a normal mid-cap would. Whereas before, it was pitiful. It was like leaking them out. And then when I tried to do the PTS follower, and this much added spring just created a situation where it just stopped. So now this old mag is good to go, and we'll see here in a minute. I'm going to put the replica back together, and I'll be running it through the chrono using 3.2 gram BBs to verify the FPS, the joules. Well, really only gonna have to worry about the joules because we're shooting for, no pun intended, 1.5, and then seeing where the rounds per second is. And that way you guys have an idea how this is performing. And I do plan on doing a field test with this replica so you guys can see how it performs out on the field. So with that being said, let's head on over to the chrono. Alright, so first I'm going to show you the FPS consistency from shot to shot. We're going to do 10 shots in semi, and we got our max, minimum, and average here. So if you watch here, you'll see the average FPS. And then after we do the 10 shots, we'll see what the joules are on the other screen. Alright, here we go. Holy shit. That is some hella nice FPS consistency. Okay. Whoops. A little bit over 1.5 joules, so might have to downgrade the spring or short stroke another tooth or something. But yeah, the compression's really good. And this is with the hop up off, so I'll have to trim up the hop up and see if it drops down. But I won't know that for sure until I get the hop up set to where it's hopping the 3.2s. So with that being said, let's go ahead and see how full auto is. Rounds per second is going to be displayed here. And we're also going to see, go back here, our average is 328.8 FPS. So actually our rounds per second is going to show up right here. So I'm going to reset the chrono. All right, here we go. FPS is damn near exactly the same. Getting 330, so we gain like 2 FPS. That's negligible. But yeah, we're almost getting 25 rounds a second. I think it's really nice. For funsies, let's spam semi. Wow. Yeah, no gear whine or anything like that, man. This thing sounds great. Let's do full auto again for funsies. And we're out. Hell yeah.
Oh, got one.
Sorry, I'm leaving now.
Fuck, guns on safe. Sorry! Gun hit! Zane, I'm sorry!
And the final touch-ups, we laser etched Erica, and I'm sure some of the German guys out there or HK enthusiasts know what this is. If you're unfamiliar, it's the marching song of the German military. Then we put our Wyshtech Airsoft logo on both sides of the receiver right in this area, since the customer wanted our logo on his gorgeous HK417. Leave down in the comments what you guys think of this build, or what you would have done differently if this was your HK417, and or if you have any questions in this particular build. And if you made it this far and you want to support the channel, you'd simply hit that like and subscribe button, which would help me out tremendously to get more content out to you guys. With that out of the way, appreciate you guys making it this far and watching the video. It means a lot, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye guys.